Have you ever noticed how the room changes when you walk in? Not because you said something, not because you made a scene, but because something within you, your silence, your calm, shifted the entire atmosphere? Why does that happen? Why do some people feel uncomfortable around you, even when you've done nothing but be yourself? Welcome to Stillness Unfolded, where we don't just explore teachings, we enter into transformation. Today's video is unlike anything you've watched before. We're going to dive deep into 12 subtle but powerful signs that your aura, your energy, your presence isn't just strong, it's deeply disruptive. Not in a destructive way, but in a way that unsettles illusion, awakens truth, and exposes what's been hidden. This isn't just information, it's reflection. And if you've ever wondered why people either open up to you completely or pull away without warning, this video may explain what's really happening beneath the surface. So grab a quiet moment. And please, before we begin, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and drop a comment down below with your thoughts or experiences. Your engagement helps this space grow and allows more souls like you to find these teachings. This video contains layered insights, deep truths, and moments of realization you won't want to miss. So stay with us until the end. You may come out seeing yourself completely differently. Let's begin. 1. You make others reflect, without saying a word. There are moments when the most powerful thing you can do is simply be. Not speak, not explain, just exist, with presence, with awareness, with calm. And in those moments, the atmosphere around you changes. You enter a room, and without uttering a word, the energy shifts. Conversations falter. Laughter becomes louder, too loud, as if forced. Some people fidget, others retreat. They don't quite understand what's happening, but you do. You felt it before. You didn't judge them. You didn't even look at them with intensity. And yet, they feel seen. Too deeply, too honestly. That's what happens when your inner stillness becomes a mirror. A clean, undistorted one. It doesn't reflect just appearances, it reflects truth. And not everyone is ready to see their truth. Some haven't looked at themselves in years. Some have built walls of noise, distraction, identity. When you show up, quiet but anchored, your very existence whispers a question they've been avoiding. Who are you, really? Zen doesn't seek confrontation. It creates conditions for awakening. And you, without even meaning to, become a condition, because you reflect what others try to hide from. There's an ancient teaching. When the mind is still, the universe surrenders its secrets. But what happens when your mind is still, and theirs is not? They feel exposed. Not because you pry, but because your energy invites truth. It's like standing in front of a perfectly still lake. You see your own reflection more clearly than ever. It's beautiful and terrifying. So when someone becomes defensive, changes the subject, or even leaves your presence with no explanation, don't take it personally. It's not rejection. It's resistance. You didn't disturb them. You simply reminded them of who they are. And for some, that's the most unsettling thing of all. You are not their enemy. You are their mirror. And not everyone is ready to look. 2. Your inner stability is mistaken for arrogance. You walk through life with quiet confidence. Not the loud kind that needs a stage, but the grounded kind that doesn't flinch in the face of storms. You don't interrupt. You don't seek to be right. You're content in your center. And that's exactly what unsettles people. To those who are constantly looking outward for approval, your lack of need appears threatening. You're not trying to outshine anyone. You're not even trying to be seen. But your refusal to engage in comparison, in ego games, in validation-seeking behavior makes others wonder, who does this person think they are? The answer is simple. You don't think you're more. You just don't think you're less. And in a world where many people are wired to measure their worth through external reaction, someone who doesn't play that game is easily labeled as arrogant. But arrogance shouts. Arrogance needs an audience. Your peace doesn't. There's a Zen phrase that says, the bamboo bends in the storm, but does not break. That's your spirit. Flexible, but rooted. And to someone who has only ever experienced self-worth through noise or performance, your quiet integrity reads like defiance. What they don't see is that your detachment isn't superiority, it's freedom. You're not above them. You're just no longer entangled in the same race. You are no threat. But to the ego, which thrives on conflict, on proof, on applause, your neutrality is offensive. People may test you, mislabel you, Try to provoke a reaction just to confirm their assumptions. But stay grounded. You are not here to convince the world of your worth. You are here to live it. Your stillness is not a weapon. It's your home. Let others misunderstand. Your peace doesn't need to shout to be heard. 3. Strangers feel uncomfortable making small talk with you. You're standing in line. Someone tries to break the silence with a casual joke, a comment about the weather, or a passing remark about something trivial. You smile politely, but your response is brief. The conversation falters. They shuffle, glance around, and eventually go quiet. It's not that you're unfriendly. It's not that you're cold. It's that your presence isn't wired for pretense. In a world overflowing with surface-level exchanges, you carry an energy that craves depth. Your aura isn't built to float on the surface. It sinks to the root. And that makes shallow talk feel, to others, strangely, heavy. You don't reject small talk out of pride. You simply emit a frequency that doesn't resonate with it. And those who try to engage with you from a place of artificiality feel that disconnect, even if they can't explain it. It's as if your silence reminds them that there's something more to say, but they don't know what it is or how to get there. So they default to the familiar, and the familiar crumbles. Zen wisdom says, words should be like dew on petals, gentle, real, and nourishing. But much of what people say isn't dew. It's noise. And your energy doesn't feed off noise. There's a kind of spiritual gravity to those who have cultivated inner stillness. Your very presence encourages introspection. It inspires authenticity. It invites vulnerability. And that invitation, though unspoken, can be uncomfortable for someone who isn't ready to go there. They may sense that meaningless chatter feels inappropriate around you. Not because you judge, but because your being speaks a different language. A quieter one. A truer one. So when people stumble through conversations with you, or when silence wraps around you like a cloak, know this. You're not awkward. You're not cold. You're just real. And in a world used to masks, reality can be disarming. 4. You make people nervous when they lie to you. There's a strange tension that enters the air when someone tries to deceive you. You don't call them out. You don't raise your voice. You may even smile gently. And yet, their words start to unravel, fast. They fidget. Their tone shifts. They over-explain. Or worse, they go silent altogether, suddenly aware that something in you has already seen past the veil. It's not what you say. It's what you see, or more precisely, what your presence reflects. You carry a clarity that exposes distortion, not through confrontation, but through contrast. Truth, when fully embodied, doesn't need to accuse. It simply makes falsehood tremble in its presence. In Buddhist thought, this is known as prajna, the wisdom that perceives reality as it is, beyond layers of delusion. You don't need proof. You don't need to dissect lies. Your energy already reveals what words try to conceal. Zen teaches, when the water is still, the mud settles. And in your stillness, the dishonesty in others begins to rise to the surface. Not because you stirred it, but because your peace invited clarity. This makes people nervous, especially those who are used to hiding behind charm, persuasion, or storytelling. They sense, almost instinctively, that you cannot be fooled, not because you're suspicious, but because you're awake. Some will backpedal. Some will confess. Some will disappear altogether, too unnerved by the quiet realization that their mask doesn't work around you. And it's not personal. It's not even spiritual superiority. It's resonance. Lies are heavy. They vibrate low. And your presence, grounded in alignment, vibrates high. The dissonance is uncomfortable and undeniable. So when someone stammers in your presence or avoids eye contact after bending the truth, understand this. You didn't make them nervous. Truth did. And you, by simply being who you are, became the space where truth was finally felt. 5. People often feel tired around you, though you do nothing. You've had this experience more than once. You're with someone, perhaps just sitting quietly, sharing space. The conversation isn't intense. There's no emotional drama. And yet, when they leave, they sigh, slump, or even say something like, "I don't know why I'm so tired." They don't realize what just happened, but you do. Because in your presence, they stop pretending. They let go of the roles, the personas, the rehearsed lines. Not because you told them to, but because something about your stillness gently removed the need for performance. And for many, that alone is exhausting. Not because truth is heavy, but because maintaining illusions is. In Buddhist psychology, this is the weight of dukkha, the suffering that comes from clinging to false identities. When someone carries those identities for too long, their body and mind grow weary. But they don't notice it until they meet someone who doesn't need them to perform. That someone is you. You didn't drain them. You didn't demand their energy. You simply offered a space where their masks could fall away. And when they did, the nervous system finally relaxed. The armor dropped, and what was left behind was raw, unguarded humanness. Zen teaches, let go or be dragged. And for a moment, in your presence, they let go. And even if it left them tired, it also left them lighter. You may not always see this as a gift. In fact, you might even wonder if you're somehow overwhelming to be around. But the opposite is true. You are liberating. You are the soft wind that helps the leaves detach. You are the silent invitation to stop carrying what no longer serves. Fatigue, in your presence, is not depletion. It's release. You didn't tire them out. You helped them breathe out for the first time in a long while. And sometimes, that's the beginning of healing. 6. You naturally command respect, even without trying. You don't raise your voice. You don't assert your dominance. You don't demand attention when you enter a room. And yet, people pause when you speak. They listen a little longer. They instinctively adjust their posture. Not out of fear, but out of reverence. This isn't charisma. It's not social power. It's something far more subtle, far more real. It's alignment. When you are deeply connected to your inner truth, you begin to emit an unshakable energy. It doesn't need to convince. It doesn't need to impress. It simply is. And others feel it. Even those who don't fully understand it begin to sense they're in the presence of someone who doesn't sway easily. Someone who has anchored themselves to something deeper. Zen doesn't teach you to become larger than life. It teaches you to become fully present in life. And true presence commands more respect than any title ever could. There's a passage in the Dhammapada that says, like a solid rock is not shaken by the wind, so the wise are not moved by praise or blame. You embody that solidity. When you walk in peace, people notice, even if they don't know why. Your words carry more weight not because they're louder, but because they're born from silence, reflection, and intention. It's important to understand that this kind of respect isn't about ego. It's about resonance. Your very being communicates. I have bowed to everything within me. That's why I bow to nothing outside me. This isn't arrogance. It's spiritual maturity. You might find people seeking your advice, asking for your perspective, or simply standing near you without knowing why. Some will misinterpret this as magnetism, but it's deeper than that. It's not about attracting people. It's about reminding them what inner strength feels like. And in a world filled with noise, your calm becomes the authority they didn't realize they were seeking. 7. You attract confessions from strangers. You're not a therapist. You're not asking personal questions. But somehow, people open up around you. Easily, unexpectedly, and often with tears in their eyes. They tell you things they've hidden for years. Confessions about guilt, about love lost, about childhood wounds they never intended to revisit. It happens in waiting rooms, on buses, in the quiet pause after a meeting. And always, they end with something like, I don't know why I just told you that. But you do. Your aura is not just calm, it's safe. In a world where people are constantly judged, categorized, or dismissed, you offer something increasingly rare: presence without condition, listening without agenda, space without pressure. And in that space, truth naturally rises to the surface. Zen teaches that the deepest compassion is not fixing someone, it's witnessing them. You are that witness, not with pity, not with sympathy, but with grounded stillness that says, you can be who you are here. There's no mask strong enough to withstand that kind of acceptance. So the stories people carry, the burdens they've kept hidden, begin to spill out, not because they're ready, but because your presence makes them feel safe enough to try. It's not your job to carry their pain, but it's your gift to allow it to be spoken. The human soul longs to be heard, not by someone offering solutions, but by someone who holds space with quiet reverence. That's what you do. You may not even realize how healing your stillness is, but to someone walking through life unseen, unheard, or silenced, your presence feels like sunlight after years in the cave. You are not their savior. You are their moment of honesty. And that, in many ways, is more powerful than anything else you could offer. 8. People compete with you even if you show no interest. You never stepped into the arena. You never declared yourself an opponent. Yet somehow, someone always tries to outshine you, outperform you, or prove they're better than you. You didn't challenge them, but your very presence triggered something in them, a subtle sense of inadequacy they may not even understand. You see, when someone has built their identity on being seen, being praised, or being on top, they're always subconsciously scanning for threats. And when you walk in, calm, grounded, and disinterested in the competition altogether, you don't confirm their status, you unsettle it. To the ego, your peace looks like provocation. Your refusal to compete gets interpreted as superiority. Your silence becomes a battlefield they didn't expect. They try harder, talk louder, push further, but you remain still. Zen reminds us, the moon does not fight the barking dog. It simply shines. And that's exactly what you do. You're not trying to win. You're just not playing the game. But that, in itself, can feel like a threat to those who measure self-worth through comparison. When someone's identity is tied to being better, your detachment exposes their dependence on external validation. So they lash out, not with malice necessarily, but with urgency, trying to reclaim a sense of control, of being enough. The irony is, you don't see them as less. You're not measuring anyone. You're simply walking your own path, eyes inward, energy intact. But your presence breaks the spell of the ego around them. It whispers, you don't need to chase. You just need to be. And for someone not ready to hear that, it feels like an attack, even though all you did was exist. Let them race. Let them compare. Let them perform. You don't need to defend your lack of interest. You've already arrived where they're still trying to go. Keep walking. 9. People seek your advice, then ignore it. They come to you with sincere eyes, carrying questions that feel heavy on their hearts. They lean in as you speak, nodding with apparent understanding. In that moment, it seems like something has shifted, like they've finally seen the path forward. But days or weeks later, you find out nothing changed. They're still stuck, still tangled in the same patterns. And sometimes, they come back to you again, with the same questions, the same pain. It can be confusing, even disheartening. You may wonder, did I say something wrong? But the truth is much deeper and much simpler. People often seek relief, not revelation. They come for your insight because your clarity feels like a cool breeze in their chaos. But clarity, if not received with readiness, becomes uncomfortable. It asks for change. It demands surrender. And not everyone is ready for that. In Buddhism, we say, the teacher appears when the student is ready. But readiness isn't about curiosity, it's about willingness. Your advice, though wise, often falls on ears not yet willing to listen from the heart. They hear you with the mind, but the ego filters your words. The parts of them that are attached to comfort, routine, and control quickly step into silence what the soul may have briefly recognized as truth. You didn't fail them, and they didn't fail themselves either. They're simply in the process. Sometimes, your words are seeds, not immediate solutions. They won't sprout in that moment. They may sit dormant for months or years, until something in them finally softens enough to receive the truth you shared. Let that be enough. You are not here to be understood. You are here to offer what is true. Release the outcome. The seed has been planted. And one day, when they're ready, not just to ask, but to change, it will bloom. 10. You trigger emotional reactions in others easily. One moment someone is laughing. The next, they're silent. A smile turns to tears. A calm conversation shifts to irritation or even anger. You've seen it happen. You didn't provoke them. You didn't raise your voice or challenge their beliefs. And yet, your presence stirred something in them. Something raw, something unresolved. This isn't a coincidence. It's resonance. In Zen, we are taught that presence is a mirror. And not just any mirror, but a clear one. One that doesn't distort. One that reflects back what is, not what someone pretends to be. And for many, that's uncomfortable. Most people walk through life layered in distractions, validations, and self-protection. But when they sit with someone who doesn't reflect their image back, who doesn't play into the roles, they begin to meet themselves. Truly meet themselves. And not everyone is ready for that. Unprocessed grief surfaces. Old anger returns. Shame they buried long ago begins to rise. Not because you dug it up, but because your presence created a safe space for truth to speak. Buddhism teaches that the path to awakening often begins in discomfort. We must first encounter what we've denied before we can release it. And when someone meets you, someone centered, quiet, and unattached, their inner noise begins to echo louder. You become the silent catalyst. You may be blamed. People might accuse you of being too intense, too serious, or too much. But what they're really reacting to is their own emotion, finally unmasked. Do not take it personally. Do not take it as a burden to fix. Let the emotions rise. Let them swirl. Let them pass. Because just as the storm brings the rain, and the rain nourishes the ground, these emotional surges can become the beginning of healing. You didn't cause the wound. You simply illuminated it. And sometimes, that's exactly what the soul needs most. 11. People either love you intensely or avoid you entirely. There seems to be no middle ground with you. Some people are drawn to you almost magnetically. They seek your presence, hang on to your words, feel at ease just by being near you. They speak of you with reverence, even when they barely know you. Others, however, avoid you completely. They withdraw. They seem uncomfortable. You sense their tension, and at times, you can't help but wonder, why does my presence create such extremes? The answer lies in energy clarity. Your aura doesn't blend. It doesn't shapeshift to please or perform. It simply is clear, calm, centered. And clarity creates contrast. People who are ready for truth, who crave authenticity, feel safe around you. Your energy affirms their deeper longing to live from a more honest place. To them, you feel like home. But others, those still hiding, still entangled in roles and masks, feel exposed in your presence. Not because you call them out, but because your existence reveals their disconnection. Buddhist philosophy speaks of non-duality, where things are not judged as good or bad, but simply seen as they are. And that's what your energy does. It doesn't condemn. It doesn't flatter. It simply reflects. And that reflection polarizes. You may be misunderstood. Some will think you're aloof. Some will call you intimidating. Others will fall into admiration, idolization, or even obsession. But none of that is truly about you. It's about what you awaken in them. Zen teaches, be like a clear bell. Some will come to hear your tone, others will cover their ears. Ring anyway. Don't try to soften your edges to become more approachable. Don't dim your light to blend in. You are not meant to be tolerable. You are meant to be true. And truth, by its very nature, demands a response. Whether it attracts or repels, let it move as it must. Your path is not to be accepted by all, but to be aligned with who you really are. 12. You are remembered long after you're gone. You don't linger. You don't try to leave a legacy. You don't post your worth on display or seek applause for your presence. And yet, long after you've left a room, a conversation, or someone's life, your memory lingers like the faint scent of incense after the flame has gone out. People recall the way they felt around you. Not the details, not the facts, but the stillness, the clarity, the way your silence felt more honest than most people's words. You didn't try to make an impression, but your authenticity left a mark. That's what happens when your aura is rooted in essence, not effort. Zen calls this emptiness that is full, mu, the space that appears empty, yet holds infinite potential. When you operate from a place of inner stillness, your very being imprints on others. Not because you intended to, but because true presence is unforgettable. You didn't shout. You didn't push. You didn't sell an image. You simply embodied something real. And that kind of real is so rare, it stays with people even after you're no longer around. Sometimes, someone will recall a line you spoke in passing years later. Or they'll think of you during a quiet moment of reflection, not because you told them who to be, but because being near you reminded them of who they already were. In the world of performance, authenticity stands out like a quiet bell in a noisy marketplace. And your stillness, your lack of pretense, your refusal to manipulate energy becomes a kind of spiritual echo. Buddha never said, be remembered. He said, be awake. And ironically, those who live most fully in the now, without grasping, without branding, without noise, are the ones whose essence lingers far beyond their physical presence. So if you've ever wondered why people seem to carry your presence with them long after you've left, this is why. You are not an event. You are an experience. And experiences that awaken truth are never forgotten. Person in lotus position, male sign conclusion. You don't need to be louder. just clearer. Now that we've explored all 12 signs, the question is no longer whether your aura is powerful. It's whether you'll choose to honor it. Your presence, your stillness, your alignment, it's not too much. It's exactly what this chaotic, distracted world needs. Yes, you may disturb some people, but you don't disturb them because you're wrong. You disturb them because you're real. In a world that runs on performance, your peace reveals truth. In a world that thrives on validation, your self-containment becomes a quiet revolution. So let your energy do what it was meant to do. Not to overpower, not to convince, but to reflect, awaken, and inspire. Do not dim your light just because others blink. Do not soften your truth to keep others comfortable in illusion. Let them look away if they must. Let them misunderstand. Your job is not to make everyone comfortable. Your purpose is to be clear. Thank you for taking this journey with Stillness Unfolded. If this resonated with your soul, please leave a comment, share this video, and most importantly, subscribe to stay connected to future teachings on presence, clarity, and deep spiritual living. Let's grow this community, one awakening at a time. Until next time, stay rooted in who you are. Be still, be seen, and keep walking the quiet path that changes everything.